Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Chapter 1, Communication 2105, Interpersonal Communication. This is something that's near and dear to my heart because, to me, personally anyway, I think all communication is based on interpersonal communication. Although technically, interpersonal communication is much more closely defined as communication with someone that you have a personal relationship with, that you are intimate with, shall we say. And that doesn't mean sexually intimate, it just means intimate with. So, why is it something we need to worry about? Why is it something we need to learn more about? Well, to begin with, every job announcement, or almost every job announcement, I don't like to say every, lists that they want somebody with communication skills. They want somebody that's able to communicate with their customer base, whatever their customer base be. Something you have to understand when you communicate is you need to believe in yourself. A lot of you have this shyness or I can't and da da da, and you can. You do it all the time. So what you need to do is believe in yourself. I do. So communication is a dynamic process. It's if I had a class going right now in class, I'd ask you to define communication, and I'd get all kinds of different answers. Sending a message, receiving a message, comprehension of the message. Uh, Communication is where we get our message across. A lot of times there's miscommunication because the wrong message is received. And interpersonal communication is a distinct type between two people. Now, there was a German author named Martin Buber, and he wrote a book called Ich und Du. Ich und Du in German means I and you, or some say it's I and thou. Um, and he explained communication and interpersonal communication a couple of different ways. If you're driving down the road and there's a road guard that has a sign that says stop, um, that's I, it, and object. You're really not communicating personally with the guy or girl that's a road guard, but they are giving a message to you and you are receiving that message. If you go into a store and the storekeeper says, hi, beautiful day, isn't it? And you go, yes, it is. It's about time we got some nice weather. Da, da, da. That's communication between the two of you. That's I and you. Instead of an object, you're communicating with a person. But interpersonal communication is more I and thou. I and thou is communication between intimates, between people that are close. And like I said earlier, communication is dynamic. It's a continuum. And in many aspects, you don't know where it started or where it ends. Some people that you are friends with and have been for years, you may have not seen them for months, but all of a sudden, when you get back together, you pick up the conversation right where you left off, and it didn't really end. It just kind of waited for a while. Now we are selective about what we say to our intimates, and we should be. There is, when I was a student in a couples communication class, the professor asked, is 100% honesty the best for a relationship? And my argument was no. For if my wife worked real hard and fixed me my favorite meal, but my mom did it better, should I say, well, thanks for cooking, but it was okay, but mom does it better? No, I mean that's detrimental to the relationship. The first meal my wife ever fixed me, she fixed me mashed potatoes and gravy and fried chicken. You know how you usually put your potatoes on the plate, put a hole in it, and you pour the gravy in? I put the gravy on the plate, put a hole in it, poured the potatoes in. Did I complain? No, I didn't complain. The reason I didn't complain because I wanted her to cook more, and I knew, she'd get better, and didn't want to cook. So we're selective about what we say to our intimates. Um, Communication is systemic. It has cultural biases built into it. I had a professor named Dr. Yora Jung. He was Korean when I was working on my PhD. And because of his cultural perspective, I'm older than he is. So he said, no, you call me Yora. And in my cultural perspective is, I'm a student in your class. I can't call you Yura. Yes, we had to come up to an agreement that in class I would call him Dr. Jung. In private, in his office, or if we were having coffee or something, I'd call him by his first name. So we met in the middle, because we had to follow the systemic rules created by our societies. It's interdependent. Communication, interpersonal communication is interdependent on time, situation, people, culture, history, etc. All those things have a role in how we communicate interpersonally, and they can all affect it. Now, something else that we deal with in communication is something called noise. Noise is anything that interferes or distorts the message. It can be physiological. Have you been able to pay attention in class when you were up late the night before, you got up late, you rushed to class, you hadn't had your coffee, you were hungry, you were hungover, you were tired? It interfered with communication. It can be physical. You ever sat in class and heard an air conditioner kick on, or a lawnmower outside, or if you've ever been in class in the carpenter building when a train went by, something interfered with the communication process. It doesn't have to be sound. Have you ever been sitting in class and had somebody look through the door, and instead of listening to the teacher, you're looking over the door going, what do they want? Do they want me? Especially if it's a friend of yours. Are they looking for me? It interferes with the communication. It could be psychological. You could be preoccupied. My mom is 89. The other day, I received a phone call. She wasn't doing well. So a lot of times, my wife and kids were trying to communicate me, and my mind was somewhere else. I was preoccupied. I was worried about my mom. It could be based on prejudices. The American Psychological Association, APA, which I want you to use when you cite things in writing in my class, will not use first names. It'll say Smith J. Because you don't know if it's Julie, John, Juan, or what. Because they don't want you to have any subconscious prejudices against the author based on their first name. I think it was up to them to get rid of names altogether and just have initials. And a lot of times we're defensive because of stuff like that. And it's a social thing we've grown up with. These prejudices are built into you from the time you were young, and you have to work to overcome them. We also have to worry about semantics. What does the word mean? A lot of times they have multiple words for multiple words mean the same thing. In the medical field, I was in the medical field for 20 years. One of the terms that they use is subdermal hematoma. Basically, that means a bruise, okay? Why do they have those other words? I don't know. I was explaining to, my mom's 89, like I said, her birthday is the end of this month, she'll be 90, and the doctor told her to take Tylenol. And she said, well, I don't have any Tylenol. I said, yeah, you do, Mom. It's acetaminophen. And she's kind of hard of hearing and kind of blind, and she could not understand that acetaminophen and Tylenol were the same things. So when the doctor says take Tylenol, she understands that. When I tell her that in her pill bag that acetaminophen is the same thing as the Tylenol, she gets confused. So sometimes in our relationships and interpersonal communication, we have to worry about the semantics that we use, the words that we use. And something else about communication is the process over time. You know, as a child, you started learning about things. And the more you communicate with people, the more you learn about stuff. And a lot of it's based on personal knowledge. You know, and personal knowledge is personally, you know, I had this saying at the end of my email that culture is created like making a rubber band ball. Each rubber band changes the mass, the density of the ball, and how it reacts to outside stimulus. Culturally, over the years, you've grown up and you've had all kinds of influences, be it friends, family, religion, school, socioeconomic class, physical location. All those things create you as a unique person. And just like a fingerprint or a snowflake, no two are alike. So you may have a sibling you grew up with in the same house, but many times you have different likes and tastes and different political perspectives. You know, you were created in the same place, you grew by the same people, you grew up together, but you're different. Meaning is creating dissertation. Meaning is creating the agreement uh, between what's going on. You know, and interpersonal communication, a lot of times we substitute our own words with our own special meaning, whether it be a pet name for your significant other, or in my case, you know, my grandkids call me Skipper. They don't call me Grandpa. They call me Skipper because when the first one was born, I weighed about 330 pounds and I was holding him next to a koi pond I have. And one of my children said, and I called him Little Buddy. So one of my children were reminded of the TV show Gilligan's Island, so they started calling me Skipper. My out in public, when one of them calls me Skipper, a lot of people think, "Oh, you were in the Navy." No, I was never in the Navy. I was in the Army. They just call me Skipper. My wife and I have um, we got back from Germany after we got married, and I bought an atlas. For those of you who don't know what an atlas is, it's a book of maps. You know, it was long before we had phones and GPS and all that other stuff. And so when we traveled, I needed maps. So I bought this atlas, a really expensive, nice atlas, because I like the detail and all the other good things in it. And we went to get it one day because we were going to go somewhere and we couldn't find it. And we don't know where it's at. So, you know, now if I say, "Where's so and so?" and my wife doesn't know, she'll say, "With the atlas," which to me means it's lost. We don't know where it's at. And it's something we've developed between the two of us. So, in linear communication, I speak and you listen, which, you know, that was like the original model for communication. And that doesn't really work um, because it doesn't take into account what's going on in your mind. Interactive is a circle where we both talk, which is great, but I mean, have you ever had a conversation with somebody else when you're both talking over one another? It makes more sense than linear because you're talking, I'm talking, you're sending nonverbals, I'm sending nonverbals, but it's not real. Now, transactional is dynamic. Everything is actually happening at once. And that's what happens in communication. Everything happens at once. I talk, you listen, you talk, you send nonverbals, I send nonverbals. The noise is going on around us. Everything is happening at once. And that's what happens in um, transactional communication. It's dynamic. You can't freeze just my talk. You know, if you could like stop your brain from thinking and me talk, and then stop my brain from thinking and you talk, then transactional would be great. But it's, I mean, interactive would be great, but it doesn't happen that way. Now, interpersonal imperatives. This guy named Schultz said there's three interpersonal imperatives. You must have affection, inclusion, and control. You must have affection for your communicative partner. You must both be included, and y'all control the communication process. Now, this guy named Maslow said that there's a hierarchy of needs. First is physical. We have to worry about food and water. Second is safety. You know, if you're not safe, you can't have a communication or have a relationship with somebody else because you're worried about what's going on. A sense of belonging is the third one. We all want to belong. You know, that's why we join groups, and that's why we become part of sororities and fraternities. That's why we socialize with people. You know, the song, you want to go to a place where everybody knows your name. Trust me, I'm not going to sing it. My grandson asks me not to sing all the time. So you want to belong. You want to belong to somebody, and you need to have self-esteem. You can't have a relationship with somebody, an interpersonal relationship, if you think you're less than something. So you have to have self-esteem. And finally, self-actualization, personal growth. Um, you know, I'm not an expert like Maslow was, and there's very few people I think that actually achieve self-actualization. Um, but I mean, I'm working on it. And you know, interpersonal communication is something that's important for people that want to function in a diverse society. You know, if everybody believed the same thing that we believe and had the same cultural perspective and personal perspective and social and all these other things, then it'd be great. But they don't. We have a diverse society, and you have to be able to communicate to understand other people. Now, there's a few things that a few principles of interpersonal communication. One of them is we cannot not communicate. Now, think about that for a minute. You cannot not communicate. There have been many times when my wife was not speaking to me, but she was communicating. Trust me, I know exactly what she was thinking. And if I look at one of my children, you know, and I can see that they're upset about something, they're communicating whether they're saying it or not. I talk to somebody on the phone and we can hear it in their voice. Just, what's bothering you? You know, if you are Christian and you wear a cross, you're communicating that you're Christian. If you wear a Star of David, you'll be communicating that you're Jewish. So what we do and what we wear, you know, the first day of class, I normally have on a suit and tie, and I walk into class, and to me, that's how professional I'm supposed to be. You know, if I walked in with shorts on and flip flops and a t-shirt and had holes in it and a hat on backwards, you'd probably be thinking I was an idiot. Communication is something that's irreversible. You know, once we say it, once it's out, it is out, and it's too late to take it back. You know, there's a saying you can't unring a bell, and I believe I mentioned it to y'all before that in class generally I'll have one of these little tubes of toothpaste, and I'll have you try to get it out as fast as you can, and then I'll tell you to put it back. Because as much as you say, I'm sorry and I didn't mean that, it will always be there that you said something that hurt that person. Um, it involves ethical choices. You know, once again, 100% honesty. Most advocates of interpersonal communication, many advocates of it, Julie Woods is one, says that we need to be 100% honest. Um, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think if your honesty is going to hurt the person that you're dealing with, then maybe it's not a good thing to say. You know, but my mom always told me this: if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. But a lot of times we're put on the spot. You know, I heard this comedian say the other day, you know, she asked her husband if the pants made her butt look big. Nope. You know, it may have, may not, you know, or do you notice anything different? Yeah, you got a haircut. Oh, you don't like my hair? What's wrong with my hair? You know, you set people up with stuff like that. So we construct meanings, the fourth principle. Like I was saying about the atlas. It's with the atlas. We construct meanings for things. You, depending upon where you grew up, may call a that thing in the store that you put the groceries in a buggy or cart or basket. Uh, you have constructed the meaning through your cultural upbringing of what that is called. I was in Louisiana, and my wife and I took the groceries from the store to the to the van in a cart, and we put them in the van. And they didn't have those places out in the parking lot to park them, so I was pushing it back to the store. And a lady said, "Are you saving that?" And it was kind of I looked at the buggy, and I looked at her, and I looked at the buggy, and I didn't know it was in any danger. Well, a Cajun friend of mine explained to me that culturally there, saving means putting away. But I didn't understand that because I had not constructed that meaning. Um, Meta communications, affects. Like I said earlier, when you see somebody, you seem tired. You feeling okay? It's stuff that you put together mostly through nonverbals and the sound of their voice, and which is a nonverbal, by the way, and what they say. Because usually, if you greet somebody, hey, how you doing? Oh, I'm great. Hey, how you doing? You put together, you seem tired. Something seems wrong. And interpersonal communication develops and sustains relationships. If many times you hear the old adage where couples are having problems, we don't communicate. You have to develop and sustain a relationship. You have to communicate to be able to keep the relationship going. Communication is not a panacea. It's not a cure-all. If you communicate perfectly, your relationship could still fall apart because of other things. So just because you communicate well doesn't mean everything's going to be great. But communication will solve a lot of the little problems. Interpersonal communication effectiveness can be learned. You can learn to be a better communicator. You can learn to listen to people. You can learn to understand. And that's kind of the point of this class, is to understand interpersonal communication better because you want to be better at it. Social media, in many aspects, to me, is a negative on interpersonal communication, although it can be used in a positive way. My wife stayed in contact with her mom via social media because it was much cheaper than a phone call, and they could chat all the time. That I think is great. I've had students talk to me about how they got dumped via text. That's not very good interpersonal communication. Uh, a lot of times it can interfere with interpersonal communication. I don't know how many times I have seen my family included on the phone as opposed to talking to people that were there. One day I was sitting on the front porch and my wife came out and she was saying something to me and I was reading email. Da 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 da. Yeah, uh huh. And then she went inside and I realized how rude it was that I was staring at my phone instead of talking to her. So next time she came out, I put the phone down and I looked at her and I had a conversation with her. It wasn't anything she ever said to me. It was just, self-realization on my part because I don't like somebody to be scrolling through a phone while they're talking to me. And I realized I was doing the same thing. So welcome to interpersonal communication. Uh, I've posted a discussion question for y'all to talk about this week. Remember, you have to post your feelings about it and comment on two peers before Sunday. You have to post by Thursday, and I have that specifically because I don't want everybody waiting to try to post everything on Sunday. Because you can't reply to something if it isn't there. You post by Thursday, your peers you post on peer stuff by Sunday, and then we'll go over chapter 2 next week. I've also included PowerPoints for you to look at, and that's it for this week. So once again, welcome. My phone number's on my syllabus. My email's on my syllabus. If you have questions, concerns, gripes, or moans, feel free to get a hold of me. If you can't access something, feel free to get a hold of me. For those of you wondering, do I need the book? Yes, you need the book. Well, you don't need the book if you want to try to take the open book test without the book. That's your grade. But I would highly recommend getting the book. Well, let me put it this way. My boss says I got to tell you, you have to have the book. You have to have the book. If you don't have the book, it's all on you. See you next week. Bye bye.